Picture a Tyrannosaurus rex. 8 tons. Teeth the size of bananas. The animal on every poster, in every film, in the museum hall you walked through as a child. Now here is the thing nobody told you. That animal was middle-aged. And for most of its life, it did not look like that at all. It was leaner. Faster. Roughly half the weight. And it stayed that way not for a few years, but for decades. This is Ashborne ancestors. And this year, 3 scientists quietly rewrote the life story of the most famous animal that has ever existed. So here is what we are doing. First, I am going to show you how you take the age of something that died 66 million years ago, which is a genuinely strange thing that humans can do. And it costs more than you think. Then I am going to show you the number we have been repeating for 20 years, where it came from, and exactly why it fell apart. And by the end you will understand why a slower T-Rex is a far more frightening animal than a fast one. Let us start with the impossible part. How do you ask a fossil how old it was? You cut it open. Bone is not a dead rock while an animal is alive. It is a living tissue that grows in layers, and many animals that growth speeds up and slows down with the seasons. Good year, fast growth. Hard year, growth almost stops. And when growth stops, it leaves a line inside the bone. Rings. Like a tree. So you take a leg bone, usually the femur or the tibia. You cut a thin slice straight across it. You put that slice under a microscope, and you count. Each line is roughly a year the animal survived. This is a real technique. It is called skeletochronology, and it is the closest thing paleontology has to a birth certificate. But notice what I just said. You cut it open. There is no scan for this. No clever machine that reads the rings from outside. To learn a dinosaur's age, somebody has to take a saw to a fossil that took 70 million years to make, and destroy part of it forever. Museums, understandably, do not love this, which is why for an animal, as studied as Tyrannosaurus, the number of individuals anyone has ever sliced open is not thousands. It is a handful. Every age you have ever been told for this animal rests on a very small pile of ruined bone. Keep that in mind, because it is going to matter twice. Now, the old answer. In 2004, a team led by Gregory Erickson published a study in the journal Nature. They sampled more than 60 bones from 20 individuals across 4 different Tyrannosaur species. Then, they plotted age against body mass and drew a curve. And the curve had a shape everybody recognized instantly. A teenager. According to that work, Tyrannosaurus grew slowly as a youngster, then hit an explosive growth spurt somewhere between 14 and 18 years old. At the peak of it, the animal was putting on a little over 2 kilograms of body weight every single day. Then, around its late teens, it stopped, and it lived on as a full-sized adult for maybe another decade before dying. Live fast, enormous. That is a beautiful result, and I want to be clear that it was good science. It was careful. It was replicated across species, and it stood for 20 years. It is the reason you have heard the phrase teenage T-Rex. It is in documentaries, textbooks, museum plaques. It is probably the number sitting in your head right now. And in 2026, it was challenged. The paper is in the journal Peer J. The authors are Holly Woodward, Nathan Meyervold, and Jack Horner. And I want to stop on that last name, because Jack Horner is the paleontologist who advised the Jurassic Park films. The man who helped put this animal into your imagination, is a co-author on the study, saying we had its life wrong. They assembled the largest set of Tyrannosaurus bone samples ever brought together. 17 individuals, from small juveniles all the way up to full-grown giants. Thin sections, cut across the femur and the tibia. Then they ran 4 different statistical models against the rings, because how you treat an ambiguous line changes the answer. And then, they did the thing that actually cracked this open. They changed the light. Under ordinary light, you see the obvious growth lines. Dark rings. The ones everybody had already counted. But bone is not uniform. Some structures inside it bend light in a particular way, and if you view the same slice under cross-polarized light, those structures suddenly glow. They shine in a way they simply do not under normal illumination. And in those Tyrannosaurus slices, faint banded structures appeared, growth marks that had been sitting inside the bone the entire time. Invisible. Uncounted. I want to be precise about what happened here, because it is easy to say science was wrong and move on. The old data was not fake. Ericsson's team were not careless. The rings they counted were really there, and they counted them correctly. There were simply more rings that nobody could see, because everybody was looking at the bone with the wrong light. Count the new lines, and the animal gets older. A lot older. Full size, around 8 tons, is not reached at 25. It is reached at roughly 40. Which means, Tyrannosaurus spent about 15 additional years in that in-between stage. Not a juvenile anymore. Not yet the monster. 15 years is not a detail. It is longer than the entire supposed adult life in the old model. It is most of a human childhood and adolescence, stacked on top of each other. So now the interesting part begins. Because this does not just change a number. It changes the animal. Think about what a subadult Tyrannosaurus actually was. Long legs built for running. Blade-like teeth, thin and sharp for slicing, rather than the thick bone-crushing pegs of a full adult. Light. Quick. A completely different weapon. Under the old model, that body was a phase. A teenager passing through, on its way to becoming the real thing. Under the new model, that body is not a phase. It is a career. And we have physical evidence of what that career looked like, from a close relative. In 2023, in Science Advances, researchers described something almost unbelievable. A young tyrannosaur, a Gorgosaurus, found with its last meals still preserved inside its body cavity. Not one meal. 2. The hind limbs of 2 small feathered dinosaurs, eaten in separate feeding events. I have to be careful here, and I want you to notice me being careful. That was a Gorgosaurus. A cousin. Not a Tyrannosaurus rex. But it is a tyrannosaur, and the pattern it shows is exactly what a long subadult stage predicts. The young animal was not gnawing on a dead giant. It was hunting small prey, selectively, taking the meatiest parts, and leaving the rest. Direct fossil evidence that young tyrannosaurs ate differently from adults. Now here is where it gets genuinely strange. And this next idea is not mine. So let me hand it to the people who had it. In 2021, in the journal Science, a team led by Catlin Schroeder looked at 43 dinosaur communities, spanning 136 million years, across 7 continents. They were asking a simple question. What predators are present, and at what sizes? And they found a hole. In any community, that contained a truly giant meat eater, something over 1,000 kilograms. There were almost no medium-sized carnivores, nothing in the range between 100 and 1,000 kilograms. In modern ecosystems, that middle band is crowded. Wolves, leopards, hyenas. In the age of the giant theropods, it is empty. Their explanation is that the gap was not empty at all. It was occupied by the giant's own children. A juvenile Tyrannosaurus was that missing middle-sized predator. And if the new growth study is right, it held that job not for 4 or 5 years, but for decades. Which means the ecosystem was not patrolled by one animal with a growth spurt. It was patrolled by 2 different predators that happened to share a name, a bloodline, and in some cases a nest. A fast, lean hunter chasing the things a giant is too heavy to catch, and an 8-ton adult taking the big slow ones. That is not a monster with a childhood. That is a species that split itself in half and took the whole food chain. Now I have to slow down, because this is where a video like this usually starts lying to you. This study does not settle everything. There is a long-running and genuinely nasty argument in paleontology about whether certain small tyrannosaur fossils are baby T-Rex, or a separate animal entirely, sometimes called Nanotyrannus. A longer subadult stage is obviously relevant to that fight. But the paper does not end it, and I am not going to pretend it does. People who know far more than me are still shouting at each other about it. And here is my honest position, which you are welcome to argue with in the comments. This is one paper. The old curve was not one paper. It was built up over 20 years, checked across 4 species, and it survived a lot of scrutiny. A single new study, however good, is a challenge. It is not a verdict. Remember what I told you earlier. Every one of these numbers comes from a small pile of destroyed bone, and this new work rests on 17 individuals. 17. I think the finding is probably right. The hidden bands are hard to argue with once you have seen them. But I want other teams to cut other bones and look under that same light, and I want to hear what they find. If I am wrong about this in 5 years, I would rather you heard me say, I was unsure now than confident and mistaken. Because notice what actually changed here. Not the bones. Not the fossils. We did not dig up a new dinosaur. We took the ones already sitting in museum drawers and looked at them with different light and a different piece of statistics. And the animal we thought we knew best turned out to have been keeping 15 years from us. Every fact you are confident about was, at some point, the best that somebody could see with the tools they had. The rings were always in the bone. Nobody was hiding them. They were invisible until somebody thought to turn a different light on an old slide. So the next time you stand in front of that skeleton in a museum, and you look up at 8 tons of animal, I want you to know what you are looking at. Not a beast in its prime. Not a teenager that got lucky. You are looking at something that took 40 years to become that, and spent most of its life as a leaner, faster, hungrier thing that we almost never put on a poster. The king was old. And we never noticed. Tell me in the comments what you would rather meet. The 8-ton adult that can crush a car, or the 20-year-old that can actually catch you. I know my answer, and I do not like it. And subscribe, because next time we go after the opposite problem. An animal we cannot solve. The largest meat-eating land mammal ever found, and we have exactly one piece of it. One skull. That is all. This has been Ashborne Ancestors. Before history was written, survival was the story.